Why would a family that pushed you away suddenly want you back? The invitation came out of nowhere, just one dinner, they said. Everyone would be there. Warm voices, practiced charm. But behind it, something felt off. Too smooth. Too timed. She paused, hand gripping her keys, heart beating a little too fast. After all these years, why now? What are they really planning? Step inside. But don't expect comfort. Stay close, this family dinner is about to turn cold. The call came on a rainy Tuesday. Ivy was halfway through a quarterly review meeting when her phone buzzed. Margaret Mobile. She hesitated. The name alone was enough to pull her out of the numbers and forecasts, into memories she had carefully stored away like old clothes she'd never wear again. Still, something made her answer. Ivy, her mother's voice floated through the line, soft and sweet, as if no years had passed. We're having dinner this Friday. Just the family. We'd love to see you. Just the family. The words wrapped around her like a silk thread pulled too tight. It's been a long time, Margaret added. You've been busy. Ivy's grip tightened on the phone. Busy was one way to put it. Building a tech consultancy from scratch. Growing it into a multi-million-dollar firm by 29, keeping the lights on at her parents' house, literally, when they couldn't pay their utility bills. But none of that had ever earned her warmth. Only silence. And distance. Yeah. I'll think about it, Ivy replied, her voice clipped. But that night, long after the office emptied and the city lights began to blur in the rain, Ivy found herself staring at her calendar. She had 3 investor meetings, 2 client calls, and a product launch looming, but her finger hovered over Friday. Blank. Untouched. Maybe they missed her. Maybe things had changed. Maybe. By Thursday morning, her assistant poked her head into Ivy's office. Want me to prep for the team calls Friday? Ivy looked out the window. The Bay Bridge disappeared into fog, and her reflection stared back at her in the glass, polished, poised, untouchable. No, she said quietly. I won't be here. She packed a small overnight bag, tossed her laptop in the trunk, just in case, and slid behind the wheel of her black Audi. The drive to Sacramento took 2 hours, but it felt longer, each mile peeling back layers she'd spent years building up. She passed the familiar road signs, the cracked freeway, the endless fields that led to a life she thought she'd outgrown. The house came into view just as the sun began to fall. The porch light was on, like a beacon, or a trap. She parked, but didn't get out right away. Her heart drummed against her ribs as she stared at the front door. Don't expect anything, she warned herself. But beneath the armor, beneath the reason and restraint, there was still a small voice, quiet, fragile, stubborn, that whispered. Maybe this time, they'll finally see me. The dining room hadn't changed. Same polished oak table, same faded floral wallpaper curling at the edges, same chandelier missing a bulb. It smelled like rosemary chicken and nostalgia, fake comfort wrapped in home-cooked lies. Gregory sat at the head of the table, newspaper folded beside his untouched glass of wine. Chloe chatted animatedly about her art classes in LA, her fork tapping the rim of her plate with every dramatic gesture. Nathan scrolled on his phone, earbuds half tucked, nodding absently whenever someone spoke. And Ivy? She smiled, even laughed once or twice. She told herself it felt good. Normal. Halfway through dessert, Margaret cleared her throat. We wanted to share something important with everyone tonight, she said, fingers laced neatly in front of her. Your father and I finalized the will. Ivy's fork froze mid-air. Gregory straightened his back, voice proud and deliberate. We've decided to leave the house, the Tahoe property, and all remaining financial assets to Nathan and Chloe. Silence fell like a hammer. Ivy blinked. Sorry, what? Margaret offered a tight smile. You're doing so well, sweetheart. You don't need it. But your siblings? They still need a foundation. A foundation? Ivy's voice cracked with disbelief. I was the foundation. Chloe rolled her eyes. Oh God, here we go. Excuse me. You always bring up money like it's some kind of favor, Nathan mumbled, finally looking up. No one asked you to be a martyr. Ivy turned to her father. I paid off your mortgage when the bank was ready to take this house. I covered Chloe's tuition when you said there wasn't a cent left. I wired money every single month for 10 years, just so Mom didn't have to go back to work. Gregory's face tightened. That's what families do. We help each other. But only when it benefits you, right? Her voice rose. When I help, it's obligation. When I ask for fairness, it's selfish. Margaret stood, her voice sharp. You always have to make everything about you. This was supposed to be a peaceful dinner. Peaceful? Ivy laughed, hollow and bitter. You blindsided me with a will. You gave away everything while I sat here eating pie like an idiot. Nathan leaned back, arms crossed. You're rich. Why do you even care? Because it was never about the money. Ivy snapped. It was about being seen. Being valued. But clearly, I never was. Chloe scoffed. Maybe you should stop keeping score if you're so generous. Ivy's hands trembled in her lap. Her eyes scanned the faces around the table, cold, defensive, annoyed. Not one looked ashamed. Not one looked surprised. You all used me, she whispered. And I let you. No one denied it. The room felt suddenly smaller. The air thicker. Ivy stood slowly, chair scraping against the floor like nails on a chalkboard. You know what, she said, voice steady now, eyes burning with clarity. Enjoy the will. Enjoy everything. Because starting tonight, I'm done keeping this family afloat. She walked out without looking back. The moment Ivy returned to San Francisco, the weight of everything pressed on her like a second skin. The skyline looked different. The city that once fueled her felt muted now, as if even its rhythm needed a pause after what she had just endured. She dropped her overnight bag by the door and walked straight to her home office. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard before she finally pulled up her bank account. Let's end this, she whispered to herself. The screen loaded, displaying a neatly organized list of automated transfers she had set up over the years, lifelines for a family who had never once asked how she was doing. Her eyes traced the entries. Mortgage support, $2,500 month, active since 2018. Chloe's student loans, $520 month, 7 years running. Utility bills for her parents' house, $380 month. Nathan's car lease, $430 month. Grocery delivery, every Tuesday to her mother's address, $250 month. She stared at the numbers, blinking against a sudden rush of heat behind her eyes. So many years. So much silence in return. One by one, she clicked cancel. No explanations. No goodbye notes. Just finality. It was strangely quiet when the last payment disappeared from the screen. Like slamming a door in a room she'd never wanted to be in. An hour later, her phone erupted. MOM, 4 missed calls. MOM, are you having issues with the bank? Payments didn't go through. Dad, call us. CHLOE, hey. My loan bounced. WTF. Nathan, Is this some kind of tantrum? Because you didn't get your way? Ivy didn't respond. By nightfall, her phone screen was flooded with furious texts and increasingly unhinged voicemails. "Mom, this isn't you. This is spite. This is petty. Dad, you think money gives you the right to hold the family hostage. Nathan, wow. All that talk about doing everything for the family, guess that was just for show." She stared at the messages until her eyes hurt. Then, methodically, she began to block them. Mom. Dad. Nathan. Chloe. One by one, she hit block contact with a calm she hadn't felt in years. Like sealing off old wounds that had never truly healed. But they wouldn't go quietly. 3 days later, as she stepped off the elevator into her sleek, minimalist condo building, she instantly sensed something was wrong. The hallway, usually filled with the soft hum of music from neighboring units, or the occasional bark of a dog, was eerily still. And then she saw it. Her front door was sealed. Literally sealed shut. Thick, foul-smelling industrial adhesive had been slathered across the frame, top to bottom, left to right. It hardened like cement around the lock, across the hinges, down the seams. A childishly scrawled message had been carved into the glue with a key. Blood first. Her stomach dropped. She tried the key anyway, useless. The lock jammed. The door wouldn't even budge. Her hands shook as she stepped back, heart pounding against her ribs. Neighbors peeked out of their doors, whispering. Security footage told her what she already suspected. Nathan. She saw him on the screen, hoodie up, glancing around before pulling out a heavy-duty spray gun. No disguise. No guilt. Just cold intention. The building manager turned to her, stunned. "He's your brother?" "Was," Ivy said, jaw clenched. "Not anymore." That evening, she filed a police report. She listed the damages, $33,000 in repairs and property decontamination. She named her parents as liable, since Nathan was using their accounts, their cards, their vehicle. She pressed charges. There was no yelling. No crying. Just precision. That night, she didn't sleep in her bed. She checked into a quiet suite across the city, 12 floors up, high above the chaos. The room was bright, clean, and smelled like lemongrass and quiet. She stood by the window in a hotel bathrobe, a mug of peppermint tea in her hands, watching the city glow beneath her. No phone calls. No manipulation. No noise. Just stillness. And for the first time in her adult life, she realized what peace felt like. Not approval. Not acceptance. Not even love. Just absence. Of expectation. Of weight. Of guilt. She took a deep breath, let it out slowly, and whispered into the quiet. I'm free. 2 weeks passed. Ivy hadn't spoken to a single member of her family. Not a call. Not a text. Just the occasional forwarded legal notice, or a complaint from their lawyer, each one more desperate than the last. But she didn't flinch. Instead, she poured herself into cleaning house, emotionally, mentally, and now literally. Stacks of old paper were scattered across her living room floor, property records, loan documents, old receipts she'd kept like some obsessive archive of her own servitude. She was preparing to move forward with her lawyer, building her case for damages. That's when she found it. A slim, cream-colored envelope, hidden between 2 folders in the back of a rarely used filing cabinet. No return address. No markings, just her name, handwritten in soft blue ink. To Ivy. She stared at it, an unfamiliar shiver running down her spine. The paper felt older, almost fragile. Inside was a folded sheet of paper and a thin official document. She opened the document first. Her breath caught. Birth certificate. Not hers, or rather, not the one she thought was hers. Name, Ivy. Mother, Helen Bennett. Father, Robert Bennett. She didn't recognize either name. Her eyes darted to the letter, hands suddenly clammy as she unfolded it. The handwriting was feminine, elegant, slightly shaky with age. My dearest Ivy. If you're reading this, I can only imagine how much your world has just changed. My name is Helen. I am your birth mother. I loved you from the moment I knew you existed. But life, as it often does, made love not enough. I was 17. Alone. Your father. He left before I could even say the word pregnant. The Quinns, Margaret and Gregory, they were family friends. They had the resources I didn't. They said they would raise you as their own. That they would love you. That you would never feel the absence of me. But something in my heart always feared they wouldn't. I kept this letter hidden in the hopes that, someday, you would know the truth, not because I want anything from you, but because you deserve to know where you came from. And that your life was never a mistake. You were never unwanted. Love always. Helen. Ivy stared at the letter for a long time, her vision swimming. Her heart didn't beat, it thudded. The room around her seemed to blur, like her mind couldn't quite grasp what was real and what had always been a lie. She sat down slowly on the edge of her couch. They knew. The words slipped from her lips like a curse. They knew, Margaret and Gregory, they knew she wasn't theirs. And they'd kept it from her. Not out of love or protection, but control. She thought of her childhood. The way they treated Nathan and Chloe like royalty, and her like a stray they'd reluctantly taken in. The years she'd blamed herself for not being lovable enough. For never being quite right. All the nights she stayed up worrying about her mother's medications, her father's debt. All the days she rearranged her schedule to be present, to give, to prove she belonged. None of it had been enough. Because they had never wanted her to belong. They had wanted her to serve. To be useful. To fund a life that didn't even have space for her in the end. Tears didn't come. Not right away. What she felt wasn't sadness. It was clarity. A brutal, burning clarity that scorched through every last ounce of guilt still clinging to her ribs. She folded the letter carefully, placed it back into the envelope, and stood in front of the floor-length mirror across her hallway. She didn't look different. But everything inside her had changed. You were never unwanted. That one line hit deeper than a lifetime of their silence. For the first time, Ivy wasn't angry. She was done. The whispers started small. A vague Facebook post from Margaret, full of coded sorrow and not so subtle daggers. Some children forget the hands that raised them. Some even tried to ruin the family that gave them everything. Then came the phone calls, from old neighbors, church acquaintances, even distant relatives Ivy hadn't spoken to in years. Their tone always the same, sympathy tinged with accusation. I heard you're suing your parents. Over what, a few dollars? You really cut them off. At their age. Ivy. Honey, are you okay? Your mother is heartbroken. Margaret had played her role perfectly, the grieving mother. The abandoned martyr. The innocent victim. And Ivy. Cast as the villain in the family fairytale. Her inbox flooded with questions. Her LinkedIn was spammed with anonymous messages calling her a selfish career woman. Even her company's official page received a smear review. CEO clearly has no values. If she treats her parents this way, imagine how she treats her clients. She stared at the screen, knuckles white around her coffee mug. The old Ivy would have gone silent. Apologized. Backed down. But not this Ivy. This Ivy had receipts. So, she wrote. Instagram post, @IvyQuinn. A decade of silence. Of sacrifice. Of being called family only when money was needed. Since I was 19, I have sent monthly support to the people who raised me, over $400,000 in total. I paid off their mortgage to save the house. I funded my sister's art school. I bought my brother's car. I covered medical bills, utilities, groceries, and more. Not out of obligation, but love. Or what I thought was love. Recently, I was told I was too stable to inherit anything. That my only value was in what I gave, not who I am. Then I discovered the truth. I'm not their biological child. I never was. And everything makes sense now. This is not a post of vengeance. It's liberation. If you've ever been the one who gave until you broke, this is for you. Hashtag, breaking the silence. Hashtag, not just the bank. Hashtag, daughter not ATM. Hashtag, family should be safe. The post went viral in under 24 hours. Shares, DMs, comments in the thousands. People wrote in from everywhere. I thought I was the only one. Thank you for speaking out. This is exactly my life. My God, you're brave. Of course, not all responses were kind. You're airing dirty laundry. Still sounds like you just want attention. Your parents gave you a roof, how dare you? Ivy read them all. She didn't flinch. She didn't reply. Because for the first time, she wasn't waiting to be understood. She wasn't waiting for their approval, their love, their validation. She didn't need to explain herself anymore. She had said what needed to be said. And it was enough. She closed her laptop, leaned back in her chair, and let out a long, deep breath, one that didn't catch in her throat this time. She felt light. Not because the world agreed with her, but because she did. The first trip Ivy took was to Kyoto. She didn't tell anyone. No posts. No itinerary. Just her, a used Canon camera she bought on a whim, and a journal that still smelled like fresh paper. She wandered quiet temples at sunrise, waited for cherry blossoms to fall into the stillness of water, and for the first time, pointed a lens at the world instead of a spreadsheet. She learned to breathe with rhythm instead of panic. To move without an agenda. From Japan, she drifted to Morocco, then to Iceland, then to Italy. Everywhere she went, she took pictures, not for clients or content, but for herself. Moments of quiet color. Strangers in motion. Light slipping through cracks. She was relearning the art of simply being. One afternoon, while walking through a foggy vineyard in Tuscany, her phone buzzed with a news update. A former neighbor had posted a local article. The headline read, "Couple once known for hosting charity galas, now working maintenance jobs after legal dispute." The photo was unmistakable. Margaret and Gregory, hunched over in gray uniforms, cleaning tables at a school cafeteria. Chloe was mentioned briefly, struggling to pay rent in Los Angeles. Nathan, it was said, had moved back in with their parents after losing his job. Ivy stared at the screen for a long moment. Then turned it off. No bitterness. No gloating. Just stillness. I did what I could, she thought. I was a daughter. Even when I didn't have to be. She owed them nothing more. It was on a rainy Tuesday in Amsterdam that she met Knox. He was sitting by the window of a book cafe, sketching people who passed by. She noticed him because he smiled at nothing, at the rain, at his coffee, at life. As if peace wasn't a destination, but something he carried inside. They struck up a conversation. Then another. Then another. He didn't ask about her job title. He didn't flinch when she mentioned family, or the lack of it. He didn't want anything from her. He just saw her. On their 5th date, as they walked along a canal, he took her hand and said softly, "You're not broken. You're just finally unbound." Ivy felt her throat tighten. She squeezed his hand in return. And for the first time in years, she believed it. She didn't go back to the woman she was. She didn't want to. That woman was built out of fear and loyalty wrapped around the wrong people. The new Ivy. She was choice. She was breath. She was finally hers. Family is not just who shares your blood. It's who respects your boundaries. Who stands beside you without keeping score. Who doesn't measure your worth in dollars, deeds, or quiet sacrifices made in the dark. Love without respect is not love. And giving without choice is not generosity, it's bondage. Ivy learned that the hard way. She spent a lifetime buying her place in a family that never truly saw her. And when they finally cut her out, they thought they'd taken everything. But what they gave her, without meaning to, was the one thing she never dared to claim for herself. Freedom. Freedom to say no. Freedom to choose who she let into her life. Freedom to stop proving her worth to people who had already decided she had none. And in that freedom, she found something deeper than closure, she found herself. So if you're standing at the edge of loyalty and self-preservation, if you've ever been told that loving less makes you less, if you've ever felt guilty for setting a boundary with people who only remember your number when bills are due, let this be your reminder. You are not selfish for choosing peace. You are not cruel for choosing yourself. Sometimes, the cruelest thing life does is cut you out of the story. And sometimes, that's the only way you learn to write your own.